they started JobsCentral in the year 2000, made it a huge success, and then sold it 11 years later in 2011. Then they went on to a completely different industry, the angel investment industry, and started this company called AngelCentral. Now, they're a formidable husband and wife team. Shao-Ning, Der Shing, welcome to Inconvenient Questions.
Hello, hi Viswa.
Hi. Are you ready to be inconvenienced?
Yeah, I guess so.
We try to be comfortable.
Sometimes I don't understand why people even agree to this interview. But there must be, my theory is there must be a certain measure of masochism in Singaporeans.
Okay.
Okay, my first question, right? Why this fixation on the word central? It seems like everything you start, you must make it central. Is that about ego or what?
Okay, honestly, it's lack of creativity.
At least you're honest, yes.
Yeah, so our original business was actually called Jobs Factory.
Jobs Factory, okay.
Yeah, so it started as Jobs Factory, but because it started as a campus-focused business, when we move on to the mass PMET market, our campus clients couldn't move away from the brand relation. So we had to start a new brand.
New brand. Okay.
So that's how JobsCentral came about in, I think, 2007. So we rebranded a little. And then when we started in the Angel community network that we wanted to do, given the way that both are not very creative, it's either Angel Factory or AngelCentral.
So you've got 4 kids. You got 4 kids. Are they all called Centrals?
You'll be amazed.
You'll be amazed at the name similarities.
Yeah, they all start with Ling Der something. So we just changed the last character for each of them.
Very convenient. Very convenient.
And the other reason why is Central is actually very pragmatic because the URL was available. So, we basically just searched all the domain names and whichever one was available and sounded good and we felt we could market it, then we took it.
So
yeah.
Practical Singaporeans, right?
Yes, very much.
Okay, so talking about going into this JobsCentral kind of market, what's the big idea of going into this particular space? Neither of you were trained in HR per se, but you chose this particular space to go into. Were you inspired by JobStreet or what?
Yeah, not really. We actually started in the idea in 1999. And the genesis of it was both of us studied in Michigan, in Ann Arbor, right? And we were there from 96 to 99. So during those years, if you recall, it's actually the first .com boom, right? Anything with the .com behind flew. This was before anything mobile. At that time, there was a company called Monster.com, which I think is still alive today, but a shade of its former self. And when we came back, we actually just wanted to do something with the internet. And, helping fresh graduates find jobs online just was something that just resonated very well with us, right? And then it helped that I think Shao-Ning actually got a letter or postcard from her business school telling her that, hey, we have an online career fair. So even though you are in Singapore, we can try to help you with your career, with your first career, right? So that's when we latched on the idea to say, hey, why don't we do online campus recruitment?
But how did you learn? It must be quite formidable, right? It's a completely different space. How did you learn how to do it?
You want to share?
I think so our original business idea was to be a mass market job portal, right? That was actually replicating what Monster was doing in the US. But when we came back here, being fresh grads ourselves, we realized how difficult it was for fresh grads to enter the market. And we realized the key difference between, this was back pre-2000, there was no career officers on campuses here. There was not much fresh graduate support from the universities, from the tertiary institutes, which is a very different scene from the US universities that we came out from. So we thought that that is something that we could help the new graduates in Singapore. And that's how it got started. But the online part, yes, you're right. We figured our way out. Yeah. There was no, nothing to look at. Yeah. So the idea was really just, we got to try it. We got to learn really fast. And then given that we had no background in HR as well as there's no background in any .com business, it's really just figuring out, testing what works and what doesn't work. And I guess on hindsight, that was actually a really good training ground for us because it forced us to make decisions really fast. And even only after I started coaching startup founders, I realized that was a trait that is really hard to form. But we were groomed by the situation, by the environment then without knowing.
So what kind of hours did you lock in?
Wow, crazy lah. So if you ask me, the entrepreneurship journey, you don't even count the hours. So officially, I think in the beginning, probably first 2-3 years, we worked maybe 9 till 8, 9, right? Sometimes we'll get off a bit earlier for dinner. But if you ask me unofficially, I don't think you ever switch off. Right. And that lasted for 11 years, right? You don't switch off for 11 years, actually.
But in the meantime, you guys found time to make babies.
Yeah. So
and boy, did you make babies.
Yeah. So,
right.
I mean, we
How did you balance that? How do you balance this work and home?
So the truth is we actually didn't think we would settle down that early. Yeah, so I think we started dating in 97, 98. Then we came back and then we started working on the business together. We thought that, probably we'll settle down by the time we were 30. But then there was an opportunity because one of our friends who's in property saw this EC that was a good deal. So she said that let's go see together. So, typical Singaporeans.
My God, okay.
Decided on the next step, right? And then the kids came along the way. And I think the parents were very supportive. I think what really made a difference was after we got married, the business, that was like third year of the business, our parents were all behind us and they really helped with the kids. And that's why we could focus on building the business. So like the way Der Shing put it, right, the business was an existential issue for us.
Yeah.
Because both of us were in it and then the kids are coming on, right?
Yeah, I mean, how is it to work with your spouse? My God. And spend so many hours. You got no reprieve, I mean, I don't know. I don't think I can work with my wife. I don't think I can survive. I mean, I'll be the one dead, not her. So how do you manage that?
So for the first few years, especially after the kids came along, we had a rule to say that let's not talk about work after we get out of office. And then after that, we realized it's really impossible. And then we set a rule of maximum 3 things that we can talk about business after we got home. And then you realize it just doesn't work, right? And then we try to rearrange office sitting so we had this huge pillar in the office. And then we say that you sit behind one side of pillar and I sit on the other side of pillar so to have some segregation. But it all didn't work. It's end of the day, I think it's just more of, after a while, you learn to respect, you learn to understand, and you learn to communicate in a way that doesn't make you want to kill him. Then you start... Yeah, you just.
I guess it helps that as you grow older and hopefully wiser along the way.
Yeah,
I think actually not for me. It's not so much the older wiser thing. I think I only got a lot older and wiser after I sold the business. I think it was really just the mindset because we always felt that JobsCentral was the first kid, so we have to make sure that this first kid succeeds, right? So the good thing about working with a spouse is that it's always you need together. You never second guess each other. You never doubt the other person.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a big plus that can counter a lot of the other minuses.
I found it interesting that you said JobsCentral was your first kid. I was trying to get my head around this. I'm an entrepreneur myself. So how do you actually sell something that you created together? Together as a couple, you created it. It's like giving birth to a child, raising the child, and then say, I sell you. Emotionally, I find it very difficult.
Yes.
How did you go through that process? How was it for you?
I think for me, I can share first. The difficult part was not during the selling. The difficult part was after the selling. Right, and I'll share what I mean. But before that, I mean, we were running it for 11 years already. It's quite a long time. And I could sense that, there was a bit of tiredness among the partners because we had 2 other smaller shareholder co-founders, right? There was a bit of tiredness. And then also at the same time, job portals in 2011 were considered the mainstream business already. We're no longer this new upstart growing
Yeah.
rapidly. So at that time, it felt right that, we should explore either IPO or some form of exit, right? And then it just so happened that Americans came along, gave a decent offer. We got along.
I hear it's more than a decent offer.
Yeah, so decent lah. Nowadays, the valuations have gone up even more.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I think the difficulty was actually after that, when there's a sudden, for me, it was a huge loss, a sense of huge loss. And, because the identity is all caught up with the business, right? And it took me quite a few years to get over that loss of identity.
Right.
It's much better now. And I read a Credit Suisse report. On average, most entrepreneurs who sell their business take around 4.6 years.
To really get over that.
Get over and find something new.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Then I think it boils down to the motivation you spoke about earlier on. Right.
Yeah.
So for me, my motivation was very much always about proving a point, in terms of proving that I can build something, right? And then I can make something work. After that, who takes over from there, I think is less important, right? So I felt I proved my point.
So would you say that between the two of you, you're the less emotional?
I think definitely probably a lot less emotional, right? Yeah, but you can hear her side of it.
Yeah. How Shao-Ning, tell me.
I think so. Before the offer came along, we actually had quite a few offers along the way. There were quite a few acquisition interests, but the number was never right. And I think by the time Career Builder came knocking on the door, I think it's almost more along the way. We are the kind of startups that in the Silicon Valley, we are termed the cockroach startup, where we really try to use sales and revenue to justify our business. And then when you have this giant not really huge giant, but giant enough compared to us knocking on the door, it's actually quite a recognition of the work that you have done. And I think when we actually, but to talk about what you were saying about selling off your baby, right? It was actually really very hard. I think the night before, so we signed the papers on 31st of March. On 30th of March, the lawyer actually gave us a term that was really ridiculous, just about, you for checks above the $10,000, you need how many approval and such things like that. And we were like, okay, F it, we're not selling. We just told the lawyers that, and lawyers panic, right? So it's still emotional, but at the same time, it's a recognition of what you had done. So I think when we were featured on TechCrunch, so you got to remember, for our generation of founders, being featured on TechCrunch is a huge deal. So when we got featured on the TechCrunch, I remember Michelle and me were like, "Woo, this was like, total recognition and stuff like that." But actually, right after that, there was this huge loss that we didn't expect ourselves to go through. So the interesting thing is, so 4 of us, right? We're 4 founders. We actually did not celebrate at all after the sale. There was no celebration. There was no anything.
Nothing much.
Yeah.
And I think we only celebrated in 2014. Yeah. Emotionally, it only kind of like materialized, and I realized the whole thing much later.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's already 15 minutes into the interview, and really thanks for so honestly sharing how you feel. I just want to segue into what are some of the things that you have learned, you have observed, in the course of your work. A lot of people I meet say that Singaporeans are spoilt when it comes to jobs. Singaporeans are picky. We are not grateful for what we have. There are other there are foreigners that I meet, who run companies in Singapore, who say Singaporeans are unwilling to take jobs with responsibility. We shy away from it. Having been in the industry, are your observations similar, different?
I don't really agree. I mean, in fact, if anything, I find that in recent years, the quality of entrepreneurs and the quality of co-founders that we are seeing, whether they are Singaporean or non-Singaporean, has improved tremendously. And they are coming.
What accounts for that improvement or that change?
I think what accounts for it is the fact that the whole ecosystem has come alive, in terms of at least the tech startup ecosystem. Right, and it's come alive partly because there's a lot more publicity, there's a lot more funding available, some government field, some private sector field, some combination. And then also there are more and more success stories, right? I mean, a case in point is this company called C. If you've heard
Yes,
of
yes,
C,
yes, of course.
it's
Yeah.
bigger than DBS and Singtel added together now.
Yes.
And the beautiful thing is it's almost completely a private sector story, right?
Yes, yes.
So that's what I think. So I don't really agree that, of course there will always be some Singaporeans that are so hungry and all that, but I think by and large what I see is the quality has improved a lot.
Do you think we are resilient, Singaporeans, in the space of entrepreneurship? There might be the initial enthusiasm and then you don't have the staying power. That has been suggested as well. Do you sense that?
So from my personal observation, I would say, yes, it's true, less Singaporeans take this path. In fact, I would say at least 50% of the founders that I meet nowadays, if not more, are non-Singaporeans. The willingness to take the risk, the willingness to give this a try is mostly non-locals. But that said, we do have between Der Shing and me, we have directly invested in 35 companies. I think about quite a few of them are Singaporeans.
This is through AngelCentral.
No, this is our personal investment.
Your own personal investment.
AngelCentral is a club that
where you
deals, but
of angel. So that one is more about various angel investors coming together and doing things, training and so on.
But this 35 are our personal direct investments. And I think from here, the direct interactions for quite a few, they're Singaporeans. And during this COVID period, it's quite tricky for some of them.
Yeah.
But we can see the willingness to push on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very few of them actually throw in the towel.
Yeah. So I guess it depends on your benchmark. I mean, if you're competing against the hungry entrepreneurs from China, India, Indonesia, I guess, yes, we may be slightly more comfortable. It may result in slightly less willingness to go through heaven and hell for your business. But if I were to compare it with 10 years ago or 20 years ago when I started and Shao-Ning started, I think the amount of resilience and the quality of the Singaporean founders have improved tremendously. Yeah. I mean, now we have Safos scholars, president scholars coming out.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, that's unheard of, even 10 years ago.
Yeah. And I think that's a very important point that you raised, because it's not that the population is remaining static. We are moving with the times, and maybe we are not moving as rapidly as countries like, entrepreneurs in countries like India and Vietnam and China, but we are moving nevertheless at a certain pace, right? A quick question, Der Shing, you there was a quotation attributed to you. You said that you believe that it's not a good thing for entrepreneurs to be optimists. Do you remember saying that? That it's not always good when evaluating startups. You need some skepticism to choose properly.
Okay, no, I
think
think
the context. What was the context?
Yeah, the context is that as to be an investor, right? So, and because a lot of entrepreneurs, if we're lucky, we build a business, we sell it. A lot of us switch to become angel investors, right? But when you are an angel investor, or even when investing in any private business, you cannot wear your entrepreneur's hat. You have to wear an investor's hat. Actually, these two skill sets and temperaments are very, very different. That's what I've learned. So what I was trying to say is that most entrepreneurs, when we meet a founder, we will tend to believe the founder will go through a similar thought process and experience as us. So we will become overly optimistic that they will succeed. But my experience tells me that most of the time, most of the founders will not do it the same way you did it.
True.
Right? Or they may be a bit unlucky, something else happens. Yeah. So the point I was trying to make is that as an investor, you are looking at a company with always the head that, is there another better one I can pick? Yeah. It's a full of checklists to rule them out, which is how VCs operate actually. Right. But as an entrepreneur, because you only have one basket, you only have one business, then you need to be a blind optimist. You need to really just keep plugging at it and believing it will work.
That's if you're prepared to do it without a safety net.
Yes.
Sometimes I'm meeting entrepreneurs who say, if it doesn't work after 5 years, I'm going to go back to a full-time job. But that's not the kind of entrepreneur that you're talking about, right?
Not really. 5 years is a long time.
Yeah, it's actually quite okay, because I think we need to be responsible to our loved one as well. So if an entrepreneur or a founder who is unreasonably determined despite the feedback he's getting, despite the results he's getting, I think it's not a good thing. Yeah. So 5 years, I think it's a reasonable long time for them to invest their life in.
I just want to have quick responses on a couple of national issues, right? I mean, number one, there's been quite a bit of talk about the government and society is not giving enough attention to SMEs. We are still focused on the MNCs, even though more than 60% of the jobs come from the SME sector. What's your sense of this? Do you think that's a fair comment? Do you think there's not enough emphasis given or recognition given to SMEs?
I mean, there can always be more. I mean, having run an SME myself, right, and knowing a lot of SME business owners, of course, if the government and society can recognize and do more for SMEs, that's great. But I do not think that they are ignored. I mean, like Enterprise SG is set up, they are actually account managing close to 1,000 local enterprises. And, I would consider a lot of them on the M side, the medium enterprises. The other common complaint, which I think has more legs, is that a lot of government contracts and even Temasek link companies, the former, sometimes they do not award to local companies that often. The latter, sometimes they crowd out the local smaller companies. I think those have a bit more ground to comment, right? And I think there is a move to try to, like for example, in the tech industry, they do accredit quite a lot of these small to medium tech companies now, so that they are on equal footing and they can actually tender for government contracts. TLCs are another ballgame altogether, because
Temasek link companies.
Because they run like independent companies. So when they want to move into your space, and if you are the medium-sized guy there, it is quite difficult, right? Because our government believes that, you have to compete evenly then.
So we really need to wrap now, but I do want to ask a final question, a quick comment from each of you, right? You have achieved some measure of success, financial success as well, and there are many Singaporeans like you, who have earned quite a bit in life. What are you doing about giving back or paying it forward? A quick comment from each of you.
So actually what Der Shing didn't mention is between 2014 to 2018, we did quite a fair bit of different work, volunteer work, social work, both private and public sector. And personally, I realized that what I can do the best is really using the 14 years of experiences I've had, which I'm using to both with the financials, I invest in startups. With the 14 years of experience, I use it to coach founders and mentor founders. That's the way that I'm paying forward now, because it takes quite a fair bit of time, and not everyone I invested in. So actually, technically, I see at least 20 companies a week, just talking through issues that they may face.
So Der Shing, sorry, before you answer, you have been serving on the ITE board since 2016, right? If you could touch on that as well, that's a very different demographic.
So I mean, I after going through the post-retirement phase, I think we learned that whatever we do, we have to feel purposeful about it, and we have to be interested. So the other big interest of ours is actually education. And for Ning, it's also a lot on sustainability and gender issues. For me, the education team is very easy, right? I can either choose to go help a school, my old school, which is Hwa Chong, but no point, right? They don't need that much help. They've got so much resources. So when the opportunity to actually help out with ITE came along, I immediately grabbed it, because I thought, that would be one way to concretely use what I know to help a different segment of society that I feel really needs a lot of help. Right, because the capitalist system, I've come to a conclusion that it needs to be leaned against. Right, that's a nice way of saying it. Right, it needs to be leaned against, and civic society can lean, but I think in Singapore, government has to do a lot of the leaning.
And you did say that you do believe, especially now with COVID, that there needs to be more direct welfare support for the lowest, the bottom of the pyramid, so to speak.
Definitely, yeah.
Right. Thank you. And I'm sure many Singaporeans agree with that at this point in time. So both of you, thank you so much. And may you go forth and multiply Not necessarily children, but multiply.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye. Thank you.